Also, our one responsibility is to hire, fire, or to manage the superintendent, and we do that through various ways. And so, I mean, really, most of our meetings, we're just kind of going over some of the usual kind of annual normal things, but we do go over policy and different things that are needed to take a look at and to vote on various things. And I think, just as Patty had mentioned, one of the most important things is definitely having open communication and being open to hearing other points of view and take that in consideration. Talk to your community, and regardless of the outcome, stand as one voice and to support each other. So I think that's mostly it. It really is. I think there's some confusion. I know I didn't understand all the way. Like I wasn't sure exactly what school board members do. I thought, they take care of everything, but truly we are on the policy level, which again will hopefully influence some of those procedures and more the day-to-day things that are the staff members in the district do.
Hand it to Leah.
Because of the sound of people on Zoom, we're going to ask you to step up here so the computer can hear you, so the people at home can hear you. Is that okay? Okay. No, you don't. They can hear the slide.
I'm like, and then you're just going in that order.
And then you'll see everything.
That's better.
Yep.
Does this need to be closer? Is it okay?
It's coming from the microphone. I mean, we're talking to.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Leah Lehman, and I'm on Batavia City Council. I represent Ward 2. So I think the difference with City Council compared to the other boards is you represent a specific ward in town. And so my ward is over near the west side of town, like the west south side of town. So I get to communicate to those residents there and listen to them and hear their concerns. But I'll say a bit about that in a minute, but I just want to talk about what's here on the slide first. So the City Council makes policy decisions to maintain and enhance the health, safety, and welfare of citizens and visitors in town. I always like to say we oversee the budget, the city budget. We represent the residents who live here, and we have the privilege of having vision for the future of the town, the development, what's happening with businesses and all of that, the codes and all of that goes through the City Council. And you'll even see there's like a long list there of things that go through our council. So matters of annexation, taxes, budgets, contracts with, it was such an eye opener of how many contracts the city has. Talking about just everything, and it comes right through us in our meetings. And, people who want a variance on a deck that they want built, that comes to us and we get to talk about that. So sidewalks, just so many fun things, traffic codes. In this past couple of years, we've heard a lot of concern, and we've had a lot of concern about traffic safety and pedestrian safety in town, the road diet that's getting ready to happen here on through downtown. So that's all the fun things that we get to discuss and set policy on. So the requirements for these offices. So council members have the final vote in creating laws and approving a city budget. As I already said, we oversee the budget. Additionally, we develop our own initiatives, but we also respond to things that our mayor has. And as you all know, Mayor Shelkey's been around quite a while, so he has a lot of history in town and he's been, I think, mayor for 43 years now. So that's a lot of, he has a lot of weight in town and really good. He's done a lot of really good things for the city. We approve or reject our key department heads. So that's our city administrator, our police and fire chiefs, the department heads like public works, all of those different departments in town. And as you see here, the mayor has more power than an individual council member, but as a whole, our vote is stronger than the mayor's. So we call it like he's a weak mayor here in Batavia. The council is a strong council. So let me see if I had any other notes. Oh, meeting schedules. Did you want us to talk about that now? So we have city council meetings twice a month. They're the first and third Mondays of the month, and they're about an hour long. And that's just kind of where we do all the final votes on the policies we're setting and legislation and all of that. But then on the second and fourth Tuesdays, we have committee meetings, committee of the whole meetings. And that is where we kind of just hash through everything that is being discussed. And those meetings typically run from 2 to 3 hours, sometimes longer, although we've been much better at cutting off at 10 recently. So those are longer, and they're definitely more, that's where residents will show up to share their concerns at those meetings. And but yeah, so that's kind of, does anybody have any questions at this point?
Oh, should I move it to the Park District? Just push button?
Yep.
Hi, I'm Molly Connolly, and I served on the Batavia Park District. Has anybody been on a board before? Okay, there we go. Plenty of people. All right, well, I'm kind of taking this as my pitch for the Park District because I think it's really fun, and I really applaud these guys who really dig into those long meetings and probably more work, I would say, than what we had. Park District meets once a month, and it's a small board. There's 5 people, so the meetings, depending on who has really strong opinions, maybe about an hour or so, right? So it's, the commitment itself isn't that much time. I became really involved because I would get excited about the different projects we were doing, right? So I was really excited about the garden, or I was excited about starting new classes. And one of the things that I had to learn about being on the board, I'm a small business owner, so I'm used to saying, oh, I have an idea, I'm going to go do it, right? Well, in your position as a board member, you're an advisor, right? So the issues come up, you get to advise, you get to give your opinions, but you're not the one actually doing it. And so that was a little challenging for me to figure out the difference between I'm here to share my opinion, and I have to, accept what comes out of it and how it gets executed. But it was also a really good lesson for me. I feel like, going into it, I thought, oh, why does government take so slow? I'm going to get in there and I'm going to make these things go faster, and we're going to get things done, and we're going to take care of that dam project, and we're going to get the skate park and all that stuff. And the reality, which again, on the one hand, sometimes was frustrating, but it was also really good for me to see, like, we can't just sign up to water the community garden because we don't have enough staff, right? And what if that garden, what if somebody doesn't volunteer and the plants die, and then people are concerned about how their money was spent? So it was really interesting shift for me to understand, how it's taxpayer dollars and everybody has strong opinions, and you have to kind of come up with solutions that make sense. And for me now, even as I look at the role of government, I'm less frustrated with when things do take too long. I mean, certainly you want things to move faster, but at least I feel like I understand, the reasoning, and I feel more represented when I'm involved. So those are some of the examples. And again, there's 2 spots opening up for the park board. I think it's a really fun board in terms of, like, we're working on things that are not that the traffic isn't exciting and hugely important, but it's kind of exciting to launch, pints in the park, or, figuring out how to get the little bike stations in so everybody can pump up their tires around the path. So lots of interesting and fun things that we do. And I do think that, again, it's a commitment, but it's kind of how much you put into it. I didn't ever feel like it was draining. Sometimes I got myself overextended because I was going to every single event, and I was like, I don't have time for that. So it is volunteer. So anyway, that's kind of the Park District, and happy to answer any questions afterwards.
Great. Hi, thanks. My name's Andrew Deachman. I'm on the library board here. I've been on it off and on for the last 10 years. The library board, like the other, like Park District Board and School Board, we're our own taxing body. And so we have representatives of the community that manage that money and decide how that money is spent. So the library board really has the main role of setting the agenda and the future for the library and the general direction where it's going. We're responsible for hiring the director of the library, and the director takes care of the day-to-day operations. We're in charge of looking to the future and setting policies and helping craft those things, but day-to-day is all done here in the building. So we've got a budget of about $5 million. We meet twice a month. We have a committee of the whole meeting, which is it's tomorrow. So it's the first Thursday after the first Tuesday, which gets a little confusing. And then the committee of the whole meeting's usually hour and a half. And then the third Tuesday is when we have our normal board meeting, and that's where we approve everything. So committee of the whole is pretty important because that's where we have a lot of discussions. Those are all recorded and you can log on and watch those remotely. The board meetings are actually, BATV comes out and records those, and we'll broadcast those later too, but those are all, of course, all open meetings. And then that's when we we vote on anything we talked about at the committee of the whole. So those meetings tend to be a little bit shorter because we've often had those long discussions already. By the time we get to the board meeting, we've already hashed those ideas. So as I said, the big thing is that we set the vision and then the director manages the day-to-day operations. We've got a couple of exciting things that are going on in the library. We passed a referendum a couple of years ago with the help of the community, which was great because that allowed us to set some money aside for some improvements inside the building. The building's going on, I think, about 25 years old now. It needs some maintenance issues. There's some things inside the building we want to do. So we have just are wrapping up a community survey to kind of assess the needs of the community, what they want to see inside the building. And we are in the process of reviewing a capital asset study that was just completed. See, that's on the agenda for tomorrow night's meeting to go through that. Once we've reviewed that, our next step is to hire an architect. We had started that process prior to COVID. During COVID, prices and interest rates shot up and we weren't able to do what we wanted to do cost effectively inside the building. We've had some changes in management. Our previous director retired after 20 some odd years in the building. We've had a couple of other senior folks that have retired or needed to leave for personal reasons. So there's been some changes inside the building and we've got some new visions in here. So we're kind of taking a step back with the capital asset study and the community survey. Our next step is to hire an architect and decide what we want to do inside this building. So it's kind of an exciting time to be on the board. We've got, we want to do maker spaces and teen spaces and rearrange some of the stuff inside and just some functional things like lights and carpet and things like that. So we've got some money set aside. We have to set our priorities and then determine how we're going to move forward with those. So that's our next big thing that's going to be happening here. Let's see, what else? I think that's what I had. So thanks.
Thank you all. Very interesting. A lot of work goes into this, and you are all very, very committed. So thank you for what you do. What are the next steps if I decide to run for office? I've decided to run. What am I going to do? You're going to go to the county election department and you're going to pick up your candidate packet. And the packet will include a statement of candidacy, which must include your address and the office being sought. It also includes a statement affirming that the candidate is qualified for the office and must be signed by the candidate and notarized before being returned to the county election office. There's also a statement of economic interest, which assures that there will be no financial conflict of interest for the position that you are seeking. Public officials who make governmental decisions that could affect their personal financial interests must annually disclose certain personal investments, interests in real property, and sources of income. This original statement must be filed with the Illinois Secretary of State, and statements of economic interest will be filed with the Illinois State Board of Elections. There's also a loyalty oath, which they say is optional, but I always look to see if people signed that. Swearing that the candidate does not plan to teach or advocate for the overthrow of the government and that they're not affiliated with any communist groups. There's also a Fair Practices Act statement and the petition signature sheets. And I think we're going to have a little more information about the signature sheets from people that are already in office. Must complete the top portion of each nominating petition prior to circulating the petition for signature. It is important that your name appear exactly on the same petition sheets. So I can't be Patty on one sheet and Patricia on another. They have to be exactly the same. General rules. A person cannot sign for someone else. A signer must be a registered voter within the jurisdiction. So you can't have your cousin from Iowa sign for an office that you're running for in Illinois. The signer must fill in his name as it appears on the voter registration. It is advisable to use a pen, but pencil signatures are allowed. Avoid ditto marks. But should someone do that, the circulator is allowed to fill in the information other than the signature. People can sign as many petitions as there are seats available. You can sign your own petition. You can only have one circulator per petition sheet. So I can only ask my husband, he'll have to fill out, make sure that one is completely filled out. He can't share it with my friend John here. He has to be responsible for it. But you can have many sheets and they do not have to be completely filled out. The circulator has to have a notary witness for the sheet so that once it has been passed around, you can go to any banks in town to have something notarized. Did someone have a comment about that?
Just say notary, we have one in the building.
I'm sorry?
We have a notary here in the library.
There's a
always-
notary in the library.
Always somebody on staff that has his own that can sign this for you. And then one of the comments I think somebody else made was, make sure you don't sign those sheets until you're in the presence of the notary.
Okay, you must sign the sheets in the presence of a notary.
Otherwise, it's invalid.
Very good point. Thank you, Andrew. Come election day, relax, the work is done. We're hopeful that you will step up and run for office. You don't have to have a law degree, a PhD, or be a political science major. What you do have to have is the desire to make a difference and be part of the decision-making process to improve your community. Be a part of the change you would like to see. Be an active part of our democracy. Here are some of the dates for the election timeline, 2024-25. The filing period for the municipal election in April, on April Fool's Day, is November 12th through 18th. The petitions may be circulated now. Anytime they were able to be picked up and circulated after August 20th. In the spring of 2025, election day for local offices is April 1st, 2025. These are the open seats that we have coming up. The park board has 5 commissioners and 2 seats will be on the ballot. The Batavia Library Board has 7 trustees and 4 of those board positions will be on the ballot. The Batavia School Board will have 4 of 7 seats on the ballot. Batavia City Council will have 7 of 14 aldermen running for a full 4-year term and 3 partial 2-year term positions. There is 1 alderman for each ward. City Council will have an additional partial term up for election. 2, yeah, 1 up for election. I'm sorry, I didn't make that clear. City Council will have an additional partial term up for election. The city will also have the offices of mayor and clerk up for election. Now, there have been a lot of rumors in town about who's running and who's not. We'll have to wait and see after they file in November. And now we'll turn it over to John and Katie for Q&A.
Go ahead, Katie. I was just gonna let someone in the waiting room.
Great, thank you.
Go to slideshow.
Okay,
Go ahead.
great. So just a reminder, if you want to send questions, those of you viewing at home, send them to Batavia Community Diversity Initiative direct message, and we'll try and ask those questions. So one of the first questions that speaks to what our organization wants to center and think about, if any of you could answer this question, think about a little bit, what advice would you give to someone who is considering running, but feels some level of intimidation or maybe insecure about something? And if there's anything about your own like background or identity that you could share with that maybe you grappled with yourself, that would be really helpful. Please, come on up.
Thank you. That's actually perfect because that was part of my notes. I was very intimidated when I thought about running. And I actually watched the 2022 BCDI, the same community conversation, and hearing what was said during that really drove me to actually make the decision to run. But I was still really nervous, thinking of being part of part of a board that is for education. Because of things that happened in my younger life, I did get my GED, and that is, I did, go through with some college courses, but, we're sitting up there with people who have their doctorates, who have various degrees, masters, and so I'm just kind of like, well, what do I bring to the table? Do I actually belong here? And it really was hard for me to kind of put myself in that place. How am I going to sit up at the table and appear amongst these people? But really, I think for any of these positions, having various perspectives, those different backgrounds, different passions is what brings the need that we have for all of our students for the school board. I can relate to students that some other people can't. I can relate to a background that other people can't. I do understand that part of it because of my past. So I would just say that there's value in every background, whether it's your education, whether it's your, just your youth or your current life. We need people that are diverse so that we can have really great conversations. With that said, every person just needs to have a passion for advocacy for kids. And as long as you have that, you belong on the school board. I mean, there's really nothing else besides the time. I didn't talk about the time that goes into it. Besides that, so I'm just going to add that in. Is that okay? Yes. Okay. It really varies. So, when people ask like, what kind of time do you have to put into the school board? It really depends on the person. And as a mentor had said, it really just, what do you want to give to it? So we get our agenda usually the Friday before our Tuesday meetings. But you have time to have community discussions, to sit down with the superintendent, to ask various things. And it's kind of hard to talk to other school board members, but we do try to kind of use various times just to kind of, think about different issues from different perspectives. But, being at the meeting, it's once a month. I probably you can put in an hour a month, really, like to prepare, and then going to the meeting. Some of our meetings are about an hour. Some go a lot later than that, depending, especially if you have a closed session. I don't really want to say how much I put into it. It's a lot, but I'm very, very, like we were talking about bullying and we're talking about other things. And those are things that I'm passionate about. And so when we're talking about things that are really active and I really want to be in community, and part of that too, is just really quickly is like, you're already in community. And I'm sure you guys feel that too, is, I'm already having these community discussions. I'm already going to places to talk to people. So it's really not out of my way. It's really not putting me out there. Like sometimes I do have to pull back, but it really depends on what you want to bring to the table. But all in all, just don't let anything stop you. We need as many different voices and backgrounds as possible. Okay.
Can we add one?
Sure.
So what did you find was the biggest challenge in your role in the board you sat on?
My biggest challenge was figuring out.
Yeah, just for audio, thank you.
I think I already said, my biggest challenge was just learning the advisory role to be able to say what you thought without actually having to do it. So like an example was, oh, there just needed to be a change to the website and I'm technical and I could change it, but that's not my job. Right. So you had to wait like 2 months for that to get done. So figuring out what my role was and how I could use that position, not to just like dig into the details and do something, but to like collect more information and be able to make statements that were impactful on the board and impactful to the overall mission was a really good learning experience for me. Just about learning how to, and they do a great job of teaching you what the role is and how to participate and how to make an impact.
So I'm in the end of my first term. Do we all have the same length of terms? Like for city council, it's 4 years. Is it 4? 6. Park 6. Yeah. Wow. Okay. But they only meet once a month, so it all, you know.
There's not a lot of discussions in the park.
That's true. So I'm finishing up my first term, and I think Patty, you brought this up. It was in the slides. You have to have thick skin, and the realization that no matter what decision we make, somebody's going to be unhappy about it, and that was hard. That was hard. I'm in the business of customer service. I like people being happy. I like people feeling like welcomed, and so that was realizing, and we spend hours thinking and discussing and planning and processing a lot of the decisions we make behind the scenes. And, most people aren't paying that close of attention to what's going on. And so it's realizing and being patient with the community and our residents when they are upset about a decision that honestly, they don't have that much knowledge about. And so then it's educating them and taking the time to educate them. And then also realizing somebody's still not going to be happy with it, whether it's a sidewalk that's going out through their front yard that benefits the rest of the neighborhood, but that person, it's unfortunate for that one, home. And so, but, there's a lot of just, I would encourage anybody who wants to run, like being willing to listen and engage and educate and patient and not just always defensive with people, because that's not going to build bridges and it's not going to help us be a better town. So, but I think, yeah, for me, that was it. Yeah.
I might expand on that to someone else. So in the event that you're in a position where you have to let somebody down, somebody's going to be unhappy. What do you anchor your decision making to in a case like that? Or tools you've used to define your personal values or your mission?
It's a little bit easier inside this building because this is what encompasses the scope for the library. I mean, we have lots of programs that do outreach and things like that, but everything is kind of inside the building. So it's, although we're focused outside, we have to get folks in here to do this. Unlike the library or the park district, you got a lot more people coming in and school board and such, there's a lot more there. But when it comes down to questions, usually it's, how are we going to spend somebody's money is what our biggest questions inside the building are, or what services are we going to offer? And so a lot of those get anchored in my values and what I think is important and how can we be most impactful to the most people, right? We want to be able to make this the open building and meet the goals of the building, which is learning and development. So we want to do everything we can. And so I kind of anchored around that. What's the best value that we can give to our community? And so that's how I kind of anchor mine when I'm doing thoughts like that. So.
Talking all the time. So I think one of the other things that was helpful for me in making decisions was realizing, kind of like Leah said, that the people who have their opinions don't know all the details that go into it. So one of the lenses that we would use is say, okay, this is what people want right now, but how is this going to impact people 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Will it? And that kind of helped too, because I think sometimes you have to realize that even though something seems appropriate right this second, like what is the impact further down the line? So I think that was one of the ways that we tried to consider it, like in different times, not just in this heated moment while everybody here is with their pickets about the dam, like what is really going to happen and what are we going to achieve?
So I think I heard calling folks in, maybe letting them in on more details about the process and confidence in your assessment of the situation. Thank you for that. Let's see. We have so if there was one thing, maybe you have a time machine, you could go back and tell yourself before you ran, before you started gathering the signatures, that would have just made things a whole lot easier. Advice you might give yourself if you could start again as a potential candidate.
It wasn't that long ago. I would say run. No, I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. Yes, run for office. You belong there. That's like the biggest thing is like you belong here. I just had to keep telling myself. And I look back and I'm like, I wish I would have believed myself a little bit more. It took a little bit to grow my confidence in the role and whatnot. But I just really wish I would have, just looking back, believe my support team who all believed in me and who were pushing me to run because I doubted myself a lot, again, for some of those things, again, having my GED, my background, do I belong here? And just do it. I mean, especially if you have a community behind you, you have some friends, especially for school board. Again, if you're into advocating for every student, making sure every student has what they need to access a fair education and that are safe, you are there and you are meant to be there. And just don't question yourself. Ask a lot of questions and don't feel bad for asking questions. So just take in the confidence and believe in yourself and don't doubt it. And I mean, again, you belong there. So go with it.
So I would just echo that. If you have a passion about something in this town is great. It's done a lot of great things for me and my family. I live here because I want to live here and because I like this town. I feel an obligation to give back to it. That's part of the reason why I choose to run for local office and get involved in local activities and local politics. So if you feel that way, as I hope most of you do, then this is a great opportunity. There are lots of opportunities out here to give back to the community. Being on one of these boards, being an elected official is one of those ways to do that. Find your passion. Don't doubt it. Just, knowing that, like the question was, what would you tell yourself? Don't think about it. Just go do it. It's not that hard. You've got to go out and get petitions. You've got friends in town. Your friends can help you get those petitions. There are lots of places you can stand in town that you can get those petitions at the, in front of the library. There's certain space, at your kid's Cub Scout meeting. I mean, there's lots of places you can go to get those signatures. Get those signatures and just do it. It's an easy thing to do, and it's a great way to give back. So don't doubt yourself.
I just have the one more logistics. I think now, as someone who ran unopposed, I was really intimidated by getting the petitions and really, just a logistic thing, like give a sheet to 10 of your friends and have them have their neighbor sign. Like it was really quick because I did it during COVID and people wouldn't answer the door. So I was like, I'm never going to get on the ballot. But so that was one easy way to just say, hey, the petitions are the least of it. You just put that out there and get your name out. And again, there's plenty of people here who can tell you exactly what you need to do to check the boxes and get your name on the ballot and get it done.
I don't know if this answers the question exactly, but as start educating yourself what is already happening on that board, like what they're already discussing, what policies they're working on. You don't like, you'll feel so much better if and when you get elected, walking into your first meeting, having an idea of what the discussions are already. So I was fortunate enough that I was able to had an idea, that I was going to run probably a year before the election. And so I just started watching every single committee meeting that happened. And the nice thing is, I'll give you a little hint. So if you go, if are all the meetings here recorded on BATV? Yeah. So you can go to YouTube, go to BATV, and then you can watch it at like 1.5 speeds. So you can get through the meeting a lot faster. But that's what I did. And it was just so helpful then, because then when I walked in, I knew some of the personalities in the room. I knew some of the personalities of both like the city staff, but also the council members. I knew the discussions that were being had. And so was able to walk into that space with a little bit of knowledge. So.
It's my own question, so I can.
Great.
I was writing it down to give to you. So for anybody again, what voices in our community would you like to hear from more? Or that you would like those voices to be more engaged because of the impact of the decisions that you make?
Yeah, we are. It's like a little shuffle too.
I think it kind of depends. So when you ask about what voices, are you talking about the voices in the community or the voices to bring to the boards?
The voices that you would like to hear from, to speak to you directly.
From the community.
Yes.
Okay, that's how I took, okay. And I think it varies depending on what we're speaking about. But typically, part of the procedure that I kind of do in my head when we're talking about things is, who's not at the table, because that's typically who's not being represented, so that is first what kind of goes through my mind, who's usually part of our more marginalized, vulnerable groups, because it just, the way things fall, and again, going towards BCDI's norms or values is, once we uplift the vulnerable, that's usually where we bring everyone else up with us. So that's usually who I want to hear from more. And I know in our community, my kids go to HC Storm, or my daughter did, she's at Rotolo now, but my son still goes there, and we house the EL program. And so while serving on the PTO board and on PTO, I just noticed a lot of times it was our English learner families that really weren't being represented. They weren't involved in a lot. And so from that lens, it was about, they really need their voices to be heard because they are not present at community events. They're not the ones that are here helping making decisions. So for like that, I would reach out to them and say, that's a huge voice. But I think the most effective way that I feel I can cover that is just thinking about like who's not here, and how can we reach out to those people? Because it's one thing to assume if you're not here, if you're not being loud, if you're not, volunteering, that you just don't care, and that's usually the farthest from the truth. So that's kind of where I start from.
I might add to that. So just to piggyback off of Katie's question, maybe if it's not folks in the community that you're engaging with in conversation just by circumstance, then do you have any other ways that you're learning about outside perspectives that don't often have representation in the board?
Yeah, I would say one of the things that I really enjoyed is they did have meetings downtown that were all different districts. And so it was really fun to hear about different equity programs that different communities were implementing in their own community. And so that was one of the really nice opportunities of being on the park board, is participating in those meetings. And then we could kind of model some of the changes we wanted to make off of people who had already tried it and had seen some impact from their changes.
You open it up to the room or?
Any questions?
Yeah, so I guess the question would be, how many of you ran opposed? And then the follow-up to that is, what did the actual campaigning look like for sort of a small scale local election?
I just got on the ballot. It was great. And I was still nervous that I wasn't gonna win. Yes.
Is Danielle the only one that was opposed to the 4 years? I read opposed. Okay.
Okay, yeah, I ran 2 years ago, April 20, not 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, April 22.
Spring of 20.
23.
23, okay, because
Maybe 25.
it's years. So there were 3 open seats and there were 7 people total running. So that was really interesting. And the hard part is you don't know if you're going to run contested or not until everything's already been filed. So again, the easy part is that the petitions and doing that. And then once you see if you are running opposed or not, that's kind of where you take off, right? So if you are running opposed, for the board, it's a little different from for the school board, because the BEA typically does endorsements, or is it an endorsement? And so, that's part, like, you go through an interview process, you answer some questions, and that helped tremendously, because there is a financial part to it. If you are running contested against someone, you may want to have yard signs, you may want to go out. So what we did is, I applied for that, and that helped with yard signs, that helped with flyers. I also had people help me go door to door and, kind of just promote myself that way. And that, I guess it just depends on how far you want to take it. But, fundraising is helpful. Asking your friends, other community to go out with you, holding events is always good, but it just kind of depends on how far you want to push it. But I would recommend, if you are running against other people, to do everything you can to be in your community, and to really hear what the concerns are, talk to people, get your name out there as much as you possibly can. And there's a League of Women Voters that they will host a forum when they're contested, right?
Absolutely.
So we did that. It was, it's nerve-wracking, but it's really an incredible place to see what's going on, how everyone feels. Also, the school board, for the school board, the superintendent will host a workshop with everyone who is a candidate, where you can go and learn more. And I don't know about everyone else, but that allows them to kind of be in that space together. It was a little awkward, but it was like, again, we're kind of getting to know each other, what we're about. And you will also hear from different papers and different places where they will do, again, so some of those questions, they might just print them, or they will have you like on a Zoom. So be ready for that. Again, like Leah said, really watch some of those past board meetings, see what's going on, what is out there in the community, and just educate yourself. And I think that's the best you can do.
Campaigns, battle stories.
So I've been on the board for like 10 years. First time I ran unopposed for a half a term that wasn't completed, then ran unopposed for a 4-year term, ran again for a 4-year term. There were, I think, 7 running for 3 spots, did not get elected, but went through the process. The newspapers had sent out the questionnaire, filled those out, League of Women Voters conversation, participated in all those, did not do yard signs. And then a couple years later, one of the people on the board had to step down. So they asked me if I would fill the rest of her term. So I did. And then I ran again 2 years ago and got elected. So just kind of an off and on. But the biggest thing is, she said, just reach out to your community, talk to people, participate in those forums so people can find out more about you, and just get out there.
I do have some data that I can share if people are interested. So some data that I looked up beforehand. Last election, we only had 2 offices that were opposed, which was Park District and School District. So nobody ran against anybody who was running for library and running for city council. Also, voter turnout tends to be low after a presidential election. In 2021, voter turnout ranged between 6.4% and 3.6%, with the exception of the 6th ward had a 15.8% voter turnout. But other than that, the voter turnout was less than 6.4%. And then in the 2017, it was a little bit better. It ranged between 26.6% and 17.7%. But again, voter turnout is not large. If you have friends and they will vote for you, chances are you're going to get in. And if you file the paperwork, chances are nobody's going to run against you. So I just wanted to throw that up.
It was so high in 2017 was the home rule issue.
Yep.
That is we being the other tri-cities, hands down.
I'm just looking to see if we have any questions from home before. Okay. So just maybe. Okay. Okay, great. So there was one, and you spoke to it a little bit, but there's one more question from the group in here. The endorsement from a newspaper, the process of that, what does that look like? Did any of you get endorsed and how does that happen? Could you be more specific?
Yeah.
Okay. For library board, I don't remember that they gave endorsements, but maybe they did for school board or for others, but it was just a question and answer. And then they had that available online or published that. So, but you said they did for school board, they did actually endorse some folks. Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if it was.
Some of them don't do it anymore, but it's either the Herald or the.
So we talked to the Herald and then we talked to the King County Chronicles, and I can't remember which one did the endorsements, but they did endorse 3 of us through that process.
Okay, so one of the newspapers did for you.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Do they do it for city council? Do you know? It's been so long since we've had an opposed election. Yeah. Okay.
I think, I'm trying to remember what other cities, I'm trying to remember what I was reading in the newspaper from other communities.
I know for Park District for the last election, they didn't do endorsements, but they interviewed the candidates.
Right, they'll do the
And hosted
interviews. Sure.
All right, unless there's anything else, you want to close out the.
There's no more questions. We can move on.
We just maybe make a comment that like the board packet for the library, board packets.
Yep. So I was going to say there are other places you can get the board packets besides the King County building. City council ones, I believe, are available at City Hall. Library ones are available at the front desk, and it's possible that you may be able to get one from the Park District and the School District from their administrative offices, but I'm not positive.
One question that I know you guys asked last time, like, who do you need to run? Like, who do you feel like you need to run for the boards?
What do you mean?
Like, who do you think would be a good person to run? You know, like who's missing or what kind of trades or anything like that?
I think anybody who is willing to offer a new perspective that we don't already have. Obviously, we have lots of opinions that we see on our boards, and often many of the members share the same opinions. So if we can get people who have various opinions and various ideas, I think that's creates better conversation for the community and creates a more cohesive community. So because we all have a better understanding of each other. But that's my answer. And for those that don't know, I served on the school board for 8 years, but I am no longer an elected official. So I would open that up to y'all also.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wrote it down.
You just wanted to answer your own
I
question, which is
did,
fine.
I did. Well, in that spirit, the one thing I want to say is you need to be willing to ask questions. And that is one of the hardest places, especially when you are new. So I would say the first 6 months to a year, I spent a lot of time just kind of taking in what was going on, and, you know, not really pushing necessarily for anything that I felt like needed to be spoken about maybe, but if I could go backwards, I would definitely say, again, to that confidence piece, we need people who are there willing to ask questions, willing to have those hard conversations. And I mean, you need to be respectful. You need to listen to other people's, you know, what they have to say, what the experts in the situation have to say, but ask questions. There's never a bad question to ask, especially when you know that there are other community members who have probably the same questions. We're all coming to this as other community members, like we're not the experts in these rooms. And so ask those questions, even when it's uncomfortable, it feels like pushback. And because many times change and growth happens in those moments and in those spaces. And I think that was my main thing, I think, is just really ask a lot of questions and don't hesitate to ask questions. And especially just having someone who is really, really passionate about advocating for every kid. I don't want to say don't run, but if there is just one issue that you care about, just one issue, you're not going to represent every child in this school district. So it's okay to have passion about certain things. It's okay to have knowledge about certain things, but you need to be a person who's willing to hear about everything and understand what the needs are for every single student. Because again, we're responsible for bringing that access to every student and making sure that they're safe. So I think that's what I was looking for.
Something that I'll add to that is if you're interested in running, most of our elected officials are really approachable and will answer your questions. I mean, to echo Danielle's, ask them questions. Ask the people who are doing the job now. They'll be more than happy, and most of them will welcome a challenge when they run for office. They want more people to run. They want more people to be engaged. So I think it's always a good idea to reach out and talk to the people who are potentially going to run, because we have a very open community. Moving forward, how can all of us get involved in this work? Getting involved, encourage others to run. Maybe it's not you that wants to run, but you know somebody who's not here who may be interested. You can reach out to any of our speakers, our panel. They will be happy to answer your questions. You can also ask Patty questions. And you can follow us on our social media platforms. Our next community conversation is going to be coming up on Monday, October 20th. It's Taking Action, Addressing Bullying in BPS 101, a community conversation. So follow that for more. And there are flyers in the back, and you can take a screenshot of that. Oh, sorry, October 21st. It's a Monday, and it'll be Zoom. The reason that we are doing that via Zoom is for the protection of everybody. Because it's a sensitive topic, we want people to feel safe in the space, and Zoom allows people to maintain their anonymity if desired. Stay engaged. You can stay engaged with BCDI, but also I encourage you to stay engaged with the community. We have the ability to design and build what this community is like. And obviously, if we're here, we're interested in that, and I encourage you to use your voice. Thank you for coming. We appreciate you. If you want to support us, you can donate at our website. Also, if you want information, you can contact the executive directors of each of the boards. You've got Allison Niemela. You've got Josephine Tucci from the library board. You've got Tom Kim, who's the superintendent of the school board, and Laura Newman, who's our city administrator. I would reach out to any of those if you're interested in those specific offices. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you for coming, and hopefully you found it informative. If anybody has any questions, feel free to come up and ask us. Hold on, let me say it.